Employees are complex beings. Once employees are not able to adapt into a new environment, they would not perform. Hence why resilience and high-performing work cultures go hand in hand. If employees don't have shared goals in a work environment, there is no way you can achieve productivity in the workplace. A leader that would help others to be resilient is a leader that has a mindset that fosters growth.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for joining us this beautiful day for another seamless podcast. Today, we are honored to have a very, very experienced HR practitioner from Gaborone in Botswana. His name is Mr. Shadrack Mbaiwa, and he will tell us a lot more about himself and what he thinks about the HR space in Africa. My name is Milka, and I work with Seamless HR, and I'm pleased to be here. Welcome to this podcast. So, Shadrack, welcome.
Thank you for having me today.
You're most welcome. We're happy to have you here as well. So I went through your profile and I found that you studied psychology but ended up in HR for quite a number of years and HR in many different industries. So I'm just curious to find out, even before we dive into the theme of this podcast, how did that happen? How did you pivot from psychology to HR?
Well, psychology is a field where you learn how the organization relates to employees and also to how employees and the machines work. So when I studied industrial and organizational psychology, one of the fields that I could go into was HR. So it was indicated that the cost profile is that once you complete that course, you can be in the field of human resources. Hence why I chose HR.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
Yes.
So thank you for shedding light on that. And
Yes.
no, I see why you'd be the best candidate to answer a few questions that we have here, even as we continue to engage. So, as you know, our theme for today is building a resilient and high-performing workforce culture, right? So, I'd like to know,
Yes.
what does that mean to you, Shadrach? How would you define a resilient and high-performing work culture today?
I think defining resilience and high-performing work culture, it all goes towards a workplace environment which where employees can adapt, recover, and thrive despite the challenges that they have. So, in my view, that's what defines a resilience culture.
That's what
So
defines a
now, when
resilient.
one may ask and say, but how does that happen? Employees are complex beings. To be honest with you, with the
So
years
true,
that
yes.
I've worked with them, I've realized that once employees are not able to adapt into a new environment, they would not perform. So, hence why resilience and high performing work cultures go to hand in hand. Because when you're talking about high performance culture, it's one that consistently achieve exceptional results through shared goals. Because if employees don't have shared goals in a work environment, there is no
Yeah.
way you can achieve productivity in the workplace. So you need to have shared goals, you need to have accountability, you need to have continuous improvement. And the way you having these resilience and high performance, they need to intersect. Because when the two intersect, then resilience enables sustained performance during disruptions. For examples, when you take during the times of COVID, that's a typical example of a disruption But
Yeah.
then when you don't have employees that are adaptive and are having shared goals, you will not achieve this. So, in a
Okay.
nutshell, that's how I would define resilience as well as high performance
Performance.
culture is.
All right, so thank you. I think you've even preempted my next question because you've piqued my curiosity. So you've spoken a lot about the markers of what a resilient and high performing culture or a team looks like. You've mentioned there's a lot of collaboration, there's a lot of shared goals. You've spoken about being able to adapt to changing environments or changing situations. So I'd like to know what then would be the markers of what would be the differences, not necessarily the markers, but what would be the differences between a team that is not resilient and not high performing and a team that is very resilient and very high performing? What would be the difference for you?
It's how they have been inducted within the organization. When teams, when they join the organization, first you need to induct them on what your vision is as an organization. Number two, you need to induct them on what you stand for as an organization. It will be very rare to get a high performing team in a rigid culture. But when once you become flexible, you have a culture where you allow individuals to express themselves and apply themselves, you are going to get a high performing team.
So for you, a high performing team is one where you can see people are expressing themselves well as they work and working excellently and being free with each other in terms of just getting the job done,
Yes.
vis-a-vis a team where if there's rigidity, you can't really express yourself, you can't question anything. That's the
Yes.
difference between a high performing team and a team that is struggling, right?
Yes.
So when you're in a situation where you've just joined a team and you're trying to find out their strengths so that you can build on their strengths to build resilience and to help them to become a high performing team, right? So, how do you find those strengths? How do you work with your team to find out what strengths you can build on to help them perform better?
When you join, for example, when you are new in an organization, say you are coming in as a manager, first you need to have meetings with your teams. Those meetings with your team, they will identify where your team have strengths
Yeah.
and also where they have their weaknesses.
Okay.
And
And what just
having those meetings,
what kind of meetings would that be so that you can find out their strengths and their weaknesses?
first, when you join an organization, you can have one-on-ones with your, especially with your direct reports. So when
Yeah.
you have your one-on-ones with them, you want to find out how they have been working, how they view things, and how aligned are they with the vision and the mission of the organization. And then definitely in those meetings, you would pick the gaps.
Yeah.
And once you have picked the gaps, you would know whether these employees are aligned to the vision of the company or they are not aligned to it. So now then you're coming in now to be an advisor to these individuals and say, this is what from the interaction that we have had, this is what I pick and this is what I see the gaps to be. What's
Okay.
your view on what I am seeing? Am I right to say this is what I see?
Yeah.
And then from that discussion, you'd actually see whether this individual is willing to either change or they are not willing to change. Then you can devise strategies of helping this individual to align to the vision and the goals of the organization. In that way, you
Organization.
are
Okay.
able to bring them together and align them to the vision of the organization and the goals.
All right, here's an interesting question that has come to my mind. So, for example, you have an employee who, say, you've spoken to them during their one on one, you have established what their weaknesses are or where they need to improve or what their strengths are and what they need to strengthen in those strengths, right? Just to become better. But from a managerial standpoint, or from a HR standpoint, HR manager standpoint, how do you make sure that you're encouraging your employees to improve constantly, but not to the extent that they're burning out? Yeah, how do you handle that?
I think first you need to identify areas where your team is excelling. Because sometimes bringing areas a lot where they are having weaknesses, it destroys them. Rather magnify where they excel the most. But little and surely you show them where their growth points are and suggest ways in which they can build up on their growth points. So it also goes with the attitude of the employee. Mind you, there are many factors that are involved in this scenario because it's a multi-dimensional situation where you get to look at different attributes and different things that then you put them together to ensure that this employee has worked on their growth points. So for me, I try to build somebody from their strength as opposed from their weaknesses, because slowly they will realize I need to change here and I need to change here. They do well. You give them those little recognition and say, well done in this area. It doesn't need to be money. It can
Yes.
be just a pat at the back and say, this time you got it right. Well done.
Awesome.
So that pushes them to do better.
Awesome. That leads us to the next question. So I wanted to ask about reward systems for employees, just to help them, like you say, to build their morale, to make sure that they don't burn out, to give them constant feedback where they're performing well, or where they have improved, or where you have seen that they have really put in an effort, right?
Yes.
So, what kind of reward systems do you think that employees should have? And maybe you could give like two scenarios of different reward systems for different kinds of improvements or kinds of recognition.
Okay. You know, reward, it could be intrinsic. It also can be extrinsic.
Yeah.
When you reward an employee, the first thing is, why do you reward them? What do you want them to do with the reward that you have given them? So it has to be targeted. You cannot just give a reward that is meaningless.
Yeah.
So you are saying, I'm rewarding you for this best performance because you have contributed to the KPIs of this organization or this department for us to be one of the super performing departments. Hence, you have contributed to the entire overall goals of the organization. So the employee, from recognizing them, they pick to say, oh, I am valued in this organization. Therefore, I should do the best I can because somebody out there recognizes what I do. For me, what I normally do to my teams is that I'll take them out for an evening out. We have dinner together, we share, we brainstorm, so that they feel they are part of the team, that they contribute to the bigger picture of the organization. So I do those taking them away on dinners. I do some. I actually have one of those cards here with me. I create little
Wow.
cards which like these, which says you are a million, you are super incredible. So I design these and I say you rock. So these are some of the things that I do so that I build my team morale, because like I said, it's not only money, it's about
Yeah.
how you relate to your
Information.
team
Yeah.
that makes a team a high performing team.
Okay. I think after this meeting, we can organize how you can send one to me. I'll be very
All
happy to
right.
receive one all the way in Nairobi.
Thank
Um,
you.
yeah, so we've spoken about, I think that's a really brilliant idea, by the way. That's a really brilliant idea. Where someone can maybe put it on their desk and just see I'm valuable to this organization. I contributed in a meaningful way. I think that's a very, very important affirmation to have every day. So I think I'd say good job on that. Um,
Thank you.
that leads me into much as you want your employees to improve, like to strengthen their strengths, right?
Yeah.
These days we have a lot of learning management systems, and we just have a lot of continuous learning, even though it's even just shadow learning from somebody else or having mentors. So, what role does that play in building a high performance team?
One of the projects that I've been involved in was to develop um, a shadow team for an exco for one organization, where you have your exco HR paired with a shadow exco HR member, and you have your CEO having an shadow CEO. So I have developed something like that. It also feeds into your succession planning, because once you have these individuals that are high flyers within an organization, and you identify their strengths, and then you say, but this employee can be a, a, a CEO in the next 2 to 3 years. You then create that shadow portfolio
Yeah.
where they work hand in hand with the CEO, they work hand in hand with the chief financial officer, they work hand in hand with your executive human resources. That alone, it creates that environment where employees are looking and are saying, but my growth plan seems to be taken care of. And when they think of even leaving the organization, they
They
are
have a lot more
thinking,
to consider. Yeah.
I'll be disadvantaged because in the next 2 years or 3 years, I am the next chief executive HR in this organization. So I
Yeah.
think those are some of the things that personally I have developed, and I see them work for organizations.
Okay, so I see that that works well to keep your staff motivated. It it serves also to build the loyalty of your employees, because,
Yes,
like you said, if an employee sees in 2 years, 3 years, I can be at this position, I can work towards it. They're already motivated to work towards it. That's not an employee who's likely to leave. That's an employee who's
yes,
likely to stay and to contribute meaningfully to the organization so that they get
yes,
to that point, even just at a
yes,
personal level, right?
yes,
So
yes.
yeah, I think that's quite insightful. That's quite insightful. Um, what steps can a leader take, a HR leader, to promote resilience within your team? And
Um,
like resilience in the long term, not resilience that people will, like one that we say that they will not burn out.
to be honest with you, we grow into leadership. You can not have a leader that has not been willing to be led to lead other people, to lead others, to be resilient. They
Yeah.
should have also walked the walk
Yes.
in order to identify their weaknesses and to identify their challenges, and then invest in training programs that develops individuals, and invest in themselves as leaders to promote cross functional learning. Because for me, a leader that would help others to be resilient. It's a leader that has a mindset that fosters growth. And it should a leader that is satisfied themselves with their job. Because if you are not satisfied, there is absolutely no way you can help others to be satisfied in their pursuit of their roles
Exactly.
and
And
doing
also,
all that.
as a leader, they're probably picking cues from you on how satisfying the job is.
Yes.
So, sadly, our last question. What advice would you give to organizations to help them to failure proof their performance and their work culture?
I think we should have cultures that fosters trust and that fosters inclusivity. We do not, I mean, in this age, we're looking at the dynamics of our workforce. We have different types of workforce that
Yeah.
we need to be inclusive when we look at their stature, when we look at their orientation. So I would really advise leaders to foster trust and inclusivity. Also, regular communication is needed, especially when it comes to goals and vision of the organization. We also, I would encourage experimentation and learning from failure. Sometimes we become very rigid that we don't want employees to fail. So when
Yeah.
employees fail, we are quick to run to disciplinary action. We are quick to run to dismissing them. I'm not that type of a leader that quickly runs to disciplinary action. I always try to find out why did this employee do what they did. With that understanding, I am able to come up with a remedy that would work for that employee so that
Yeah.
they realize that failure does not mean it's the end of your career or your life. And we should also foster um, support employee well-being initiatives that help employees to be adaptable to our environments and lead by example. I mean, managers must lead by example. If you can't
Yes,
lead by
correct.
example, you cannot expect your team to follow your instructions. Somewhere, somehow, they are going to rebel against your instruction. So for me, those are the key things that a leader must do. I would close by saying we need a future-proofing workplace culture.
Future
And this
proofing.
is a culture that builds agility
Uh-huh.
into process and systems. And this is a culture that fosters or that embraces diversity and inclusivity. And it's a culture that leverages technology for collaboration and efficiency and maintain open lines of communication. So for me, these are key future-proofing workplace culture.
Okay.
It's an ideal culture for me that we need to foster in our working environments.